If I had to identify the best trait that any creative should have, it's the enthusiasm to embrace new ideas. Even when their previous works are successful and their careers could easily be, just do that again. They aim to forego that and create something different every time. That would be an impressive feat in and of itself, but what if they could achieve that without sacrificing their unique and consistent identity as creators? One such game developer that does just that is Supergiant Games. Founded by Amir Rao and Gavin Simon, the two wanted to move away from the restrictions of their current company, which was...
Oh dear God, look away! Leave the children!
In order to make smaller but more personal games. So, along with fellow employee and former GameSpot editor Greg Kasavin, Supergiant Games was born. And so far, they've been pretty damn great. This tiny bunch have created some of the most original and acclaimed indie games of the last decade. Their current lineup being Bastion, Transistor, Pyre, and most recently, Hades. I've played the latter over the last month with the intent of reviewing it, but given how much I wanted to discuss the other titles, I decided to expand it into an analysis and review of all of Supergiant Games' games. Seeing what each brought to the table, and more importantly, what they brought to each other. So, in order to trace Supergiant's creative journey, let's take it all the way back to where it started. At their parents' house. Let's get one thing out of the way. 2011 was a great year to be a gamer. You've got Skyrim, Arkham City, Infamous 2, Portal 2, Uncharted 3, Dark Souls, L.A. Noire... and also the 4th year of the Xbox Summer Arcade. With that came 5 new indie games, or ports, as well as Supergiant Games' debut title.
Proper story's supposed to start at the beginning. Ain't so simple with this one. Now here's a kid whose whole world got all twisted, leaving him stranded on a rock in the sky.
With the newly established Supergiant Games having spent 2 years working in Amir Rao's dad's house, Bastion shapes up to be one of the tightest, most streamlined yet artistically inspired games out there. It takes place in the aftermath of a cataclysmic event known as the Calamity, after which there are only a few survivors. You, the kid, are one such survivor, and you journey to the Bastion, a safe haven with the potential to restore the planet. As you journey out into the ruined world, you're tasked with gathering materials to power the Bastion. Supergiant Games always have interesting ways of incorporating story in a manner that doesn't interfere with gameplay. Bastion does so with the use of a narrator, and this works for one simple reason. It gets the story across concisely and without breaking the pacing with lengthy or unnecessary cutscenes. Piloting this narration is Rux, a hybrid of Al Swearingen from Deadwood, Bill the Butcher from Gangs of New York, and Sam Elliott from The Big Lebowski. So what does that sound like?
He throws a switch. Now what could possibly go wrong? It's quick for slicing and light enough to throw. Unlike the kid, that core ain't coming back.
Yeah, I think my reaction was the same as everyone else's. That's not the only thing it gets right. You know those little quality of life details that make a game that much more convenient and player friendly? Like when you're playing The Witcher 3, for example, and whenever you kill an enemy, an X appears on the minimap so that you remember to loot them. A little thing that says, "Aw, you thought of me." Bastion is dozens of those things catamaried together. Here's a few. How do you explore a level without a minimap? Make it so that pathways appear as you move in any given direction. That way, unpaved routes stand out as areas you haven't explored yet. I want to pick up this health potion, but I don't have any space. Not a problem, that gets converted into bonus XP. I don't like this upgrade for my weapon. I wish I chose the other one. Oh, you can swap.
You can swap!
Okay, that last one doesn't sound as good, but personally that blew my mind. Gameplay-wise, Bastion is as simple as they come. You have 2 attack buttons, a dodge roll, and a special move that you'll forget about. Done. So simple, you could port it to a mobile device. which they did. With those simple controls, you have an entire arsenal of weapons that you can combo with one another, from a hammer to a carbine to a spear and to dual-wield pistols. You can mix and match all you like to see what works for you and build your fighting style around that. And the best part? Doesn't matter which 2 weapons you go with, Rux makes you feel cool for every combination.
Anything survives a musket shot ought to be quick work for that blade. Bow and bellows make a strange and fearsome team. Doesn't hurt having a couple of trusty old guns on hand.
What all this does is make you feel like you're in control, that there isn't a wrong way to do it as long as it works for you. And that includes difficulty. While Bastion has the more conventional no-sweat mode that offers unlimited lives, harder difficulty is customized through the world's deities. Let me explain. You can activate totems of deities which give enemies a specific boost, for example faster recovery, dealing more damage, etc. There's even a totem which makes enemies explode upon death, forcing the player to own their alertness and reaction time. You can have as many active or inactive as you want. The more you have on, the more XP and in-game currency you'll earn in exchange. Not only does this let you pick and choose the means by which you meet your inevitable demise, but similarly to the weapon upgrades, it means you can try it once and see how it works, and if it doesn't, then turn it off again. Absolutely ideal for people afraid of commitment. All of this is to say nothing of the game's fluent art style, showing an array of bright, natural colours along with a melancholic atmosphere, courtesy of Gen Z, Supergiant Games' art director. The world is designed in such a way to appear lush and charming, but dilapidated. Incorporating Moroccan design as well as taking inspiration from JRPGs and the SNES era, the game's initial, more somber prototypes evolved into what would become Bastion's colourful vibrance. The fantastic soundtrack only adds to this. In composer Darren Korb's words, the soundtrack boasts an acoustic frontier trip-hop vibe. Which, from that description, I have no idea what that sounds like. But now I do. Being a childhood friend of Amir Rao, Korb was brought on much earlier than most musicians would be for a video game, allowing his work to have more of a growing influence on the project. This helped form the atmosphere, being both a serene landscape and a barren battleground. There are a few songs that feel like country ballads that evoke a mental image of toiling on a farm or in a coal mine. And it's fascinating to listen to with its combination of acoustic instruments, including a goddamn banjo, with electric beats, bass and synths. For Bastion, my influences were certainly more tonal than specific. I drew stylistic inspiration from a wide range of things. Everything from some of Led Zeppelin's more acoustic music to old southern spirituals and a bunch of stuff in between. With that, he created a genre specifically to help synergize the music for the game, something that would not only set the tone, but utilize Korb's skills as a rock musician.
Well, I think there was a tone for the project that everybody was sort of trying to establish, that I was also working towards, which was, what if Cormac McCarthy made a fantasy video game? And that's like how I kind of crystallized my idea of what the tone of the game was going to be and what the tone of the music should be.
You even have instances of songs with lyrics, which is a rarity for video games. Not only are these used essentially as character themes, but their lyrics utilize the backstory of the civilizations and struggles pre-Calamity, making it seem like a ballad that actually exists within this world and not just part of a soundtrack. All of this culminates in that relaxingly melancholic tone that's prolific throughout Supergiant Games' work. It's like an aura of the phrase, whatever happens, happens, where dwelling on the pre-Calamity times does nobody any good. Everyone just keeps putting one foot in front of the other. I suppose that fits well with Bastion's Western aesthetic, like you expect to just come back to the Bastion, shrug, take a swig of Bull Brandy or Doomshine, and just get on with it. It's melancholic but never melodramatic. It's comforting but not naively optimistic. You can see this casual view of devastation in the naming of the items and the enemies. The upgrade materials for your weapons are just referred to as something pointy for your spear or something greasy for your pistols. Enemies are described like they were given slang nicknames: the scumbag, the gas fella, the pincushion, names that feel like they were given by blue-collar workers or foragers rather than academics with too much free time. Bastion don't need your instruction manuals or catalogues, man. It simply asks, should I kill those things, and will this help me kill them? Nobody has any time or energy for order or the past. Not anymore. That feeling pervades as you find the victims of the calamity frozen in time in statues of dust, only to disappear as soon as you touch them. It really creates a sense that this was a vibrant, breathing world where everyone was just going about their daily lives, unaware of their impending doom.
The Thunder Brothers didn't make it. Nordy the Bird Boy didn't make it. The Jawsons, they didn't make it.
Remnants of the old world still exist, as well as grudges and race relations, but they gradually begin to pale in comparison to the sheer damage wrought by the calamity. And that's ultimately what Bastion is, at least thematically. It's a story of dealing with regret, whether it's worth trying to get back to the way things were, or to just accept the world as it stands and venture onwards. There are still some issues. The special attacks get forgotten mainly because they're finite, fueled by tonic that you find in-game. Similarly to the health potions, you get extra XP if you pick up a tonic while you're at max capacity, so you're always wanting to conserve them. Plus, there are a few technical issues, like how the narrator's audio quality changes from time to time, as if the lines are being recorded with a different microphone.
The marshal seemed like a good man, he says. Zolf brought his antique smoking pipe all the way from the terminals.
But, again, it's 7 people working in their director's dad's house. Thankfully, at approximately 8 to 10 hours length, it doesn't overstay its welcome, nor require you to organise your whole life around it. What amazes me most about Bastion is how all the elements seem to just come together for it at the end. Darren Korb was a childhood friend of Amir Rao. Ruck's voice actor Logan Cunningham was Korb's roommate, so it was essentially getting whoever they could get. And yet, it worked. It really worked. This game is a masterclass in making the best with what you have, despite limitations. What it creates is the ultimate casual indie game that also boasts story and atmosphere without any of them overwhelming the gameplay flow. So if you haven't already, give it a go. At the very least, it'll give you a glimmer of hope in these dark times. Or failing that, some banging beats for when you're gazing into the abyss. Bastion sold moderately well on its release, but it didn't get its deserved recognition until the winter of that year. Word of mouth and mounting awards helped more people take time away from Skyrim to try out this hidden gem. And with that, Supergiant Games was off. Good reputation, a new studio in San Francisco, and an air of excitement over their next game. Now what? Transistor, the second of Supergiant Games' titles, was also their first to be released on the PS4, which meant it enjoyed a broader demographic. This was also the first of their titles that was entirely self-published. Bastion was published and distributed by Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment, but based on that game's success, and the evolution of digital publishing, Supergiant Games was able to become more independent. Transistor had some issues right off the bat, mainly because the team for Bastion started with just 2 people, and expanded the ranks as the project went on. For the conception of Transistor, however, they started with a full team, meaning the creative process needed to involve 7 people. And above all else, now a bar was set.
There is a feeling, I think, amongst most, if not all of us, that like whatever this game turned out to be, or was, had to be at least as good as Bastion, so there was that pressure.
Initially featuring a male boxer as its protagonist who fought using an ethereal being, the studio had a lot of struggles finding the game's identity. What they did know is that they wanted to make a sci-fi love story that incorporated more tactics than its predecessor. Comparisons can be made between Transistor and Bastion, but the team primarily sought to divert away from it to make a new experience, ideally with a more mature aesthetic.
It might have been the kind of fiscally responsible decision to just like make a Bastion 2 in light of the success of the first one, but we never thought of Supergiant as like the Bastion studio. Bastion was just our expression of the kind of game we wanted to make.
So after a lot of pre-production and redrafts, they finally found their groove in what would be Transistor's story and its protagonist. Set in the cyberpunk city of Cloudbank, you are a red-headed singer eponymously named Red, who gets tangled up in a conflict with the city's oligarchs, the Camerata. This group maintains and operates the city using robotic entities known as the Process. However, the robots inevitably go full Skynet and begin to engulf the city. You journey across Cloudbank, fighting the hordes of the Process and take on the Camerata. At your side is the Transistor, a giant technological sword capable of absorbing souls to use for various functions. Right away you can see how the thumbprints of Bastion are woven into the game's fabric. Both are isometric and present an aesthetically beautiful depiction of a dying world, whether it be due to a cataclysmic disaster or technology going out of control. Though the game remained isometric primarily for pragmatic reasons. They wanted to avoid the trend of real-time strategy games where buildings and characters were mainly seen from a bird's eye view, which prevented the designs from being fully appreciated. Transistor's world, however, is a stark departure. Where Bastion was painted in the shades of a fantasy western, Transistor basks in the neon glow of a tech-noir. Think Blade Runner, but leaning heavily on the Roaring Twenties, proliferated with all the holograms, nightclubs, and white cubes you can hope for. Same composer, of course, but Korb's style is chameleonic, transforming into what he refers to as old-world electronic post-rock. And I still have no idea what that means. Korb's bread-and-butter synths and bass remain a constant, but now with the air of slow, futuristic jazz. The vocalist for Bastion's soundtrack, Ashley Barrett, returns and is really given a chance to shine and emphasize the haunting serenity of these songs. A fantastic example is In Circles, which I challenge you to listen to and not get chills for one reason or another. Transistor still succeeds in integrating story and gameplay without one interrupting the other. You're essentially dropped into the thick of it, and everything is inferred and spoken about as if you already know what's going on. Not only does this convey a greater sense of threat as both you and the world are thrown into dismay, but it incentivizes you to piece the story together yourself. The first piece of the puzzle is how the Camerata attempted to kill you with the Transistor, but a man died defending you. The man is subsumed into the device, and Red loses her voice. Which means Red actually has a reason to be a silent protagonist. What's your excuse? The game dedicates certain features to creatively convey what Red has lost. There's a button that makes Red hum along to the game's non-diegetic music, which, being non-diegetic, only you can hear. And since not even the Transistor reacts, it's implied nobody can hear her humming but you too. It's effective at depicting her mental state of longing for the voice that made her who she was. You can do this for every song, which is a nice touch. Another feature worth noting is that the Transistor flashes in sync with its speech.
Go ahead, it's open. Pretend I'm not here.
In fact, if you play it on the PS4, the DualShock controller flashes along with it, as if you're holding the Transistor in your hands.
There. Together again. Sort of.
They have the same actor for the Transistor that they had for Rux, but this time the voice is more normal and less of a put-upon accent. It makes sense in the context of the story to make the voice more akin to an average person, but nonetheless my loins were left at room temperature throughout the game. Transistor also builds on Bastion's idea of coming across victims of their respective disaster. Instead of them being statues to convey information about the world, they are now downloadable husks that contribute to the Transistor's power, each one bringing a new function to be equipped. This brings us to Transistor's best mechanic. Not only do you have a wide variety of attacks or functions to freely mix and match with, but you can set them as either straight up attacks, enhancers, or passive buffs. For example, let's say if you have two attacks, Breach, which does a long-range strike, like this, and Switch, which makes an enemy fight for you for a few seconds. You can either have the two attacks separate and assign them to different buttons, or you can equip Switch to Breach for a bonus effect. Now, enemies hit with Breach will temporarily fight for you. Got it? Good, because there's over 3,000 combinations you can make with this. And it's great. This enables continuous experimentation and gives so much possibility for customization. Plus, it allows for creativity in your loadout, and likely means no two loadouts will be the same. Another mechanic is the ability to basically freeze time and execute a combo. It works rather similarly to the VAT system in the Fallout games, though you can take into account movement as well. You're given a bar showing how much you can move and how many attacks you can execute while in this state. Each attack takes up a different amount of the bar, and you can set up combos or angle yourself correctly so that your ranged or area of effect attacks hit the most enemies. And again, you can even hear Red humming in the background music in this state, as you're essentially inside her mind as she plans her next move, which does continue to be a really nice detail, though I know full well what would be in my mind if I had this power. Now, I do want to stress that both the functions and the freeze time mechanic are fantastic ideas. Also taking into account the atmosphere, story, soundtrack, and gorgeous visuals, you've got what many people consider their favourite of Supergiant Games' titles. The game isn't completely immune from criticism though. The freeze time ability is great, but it also leaves you unable to attack in the core real-time gameplay while it recharges. You don't have to use it, but why would you not? You don't move very fast, and everything that makes you more evasive takes up a limited function slot. These things do make you feel more vulnerable and add a layer of tension to each fight. But when you're swarmed and incapable of moving very fast, you become reliant on the time ability. This turns into a rinse and repeat cycle of hitting and running away to charge, then hit again. You could just do normal attacks in real time, but that puts you more at risk of losing health. And in losing health, you come across one of the game's weaker mechanics. When your health hits 0, you don't die, but you do lose your best function for a while. This creates a downward spiral where you'll get weaker and therefore lose more attacks, to the point where it stops becoming an intriguing mechanic and more of a nuisance. You could make the case that it contributes to the game's challenge, forcing you to change your tactics in the heat of battle, or you could just reload the last checkpoint. Oh, you did it too, don't lie. There were also some things that could have been ironed out a smidge more. For example, the freeze time mechanic doesn't stop enemies in place while you're executing a combo, meaning if they're fast, they'll move to a different place by the time you attack. It also doesn't account for knockback, so you hit an enemy with a sequence of 5 attacks, but the first one knocks them out of the way of all the rest. In both of these situations, you'll miss and end up defenseless. This is situational to certain enemies and attacks, but it does cause the mechanic to appear untrustworthy. Supergiant Games mention how they wanted to incorporate the tension from games like XCOM or Advance Wars, where you're constantly questioning if you made the best move. But incorporating that into a real-time isometric setup makes it feel like a fast-paced game using slow-paced mechanics, which results in a very stop-and-start flow to the battles. As it stands, you're powerless after using the freeze time mechanic, and your real-time movements don't have much maneuverability. Then again, the latter could be considered immersion, as you are literally a skinny woman dragging a massive cybernetic broadsword across the ground. I doubt it would have helped Red stand out as a unique character if they just made her Cloud Strife in a dress. Different dress! Transistor has good moments in its story. The ending is especially standout, but there are just some issues with the core gameplay that stop it from flowing as well as it could have. I wondered if the game would be better if it committed to the tactics without the real-time gameplay, or alternatively if you could move quicker or had a readily available dodge. But in that case, all I'm doing is just asking for another Bastion, which would defeat the point of making a new game. Transistor holds some of the strongest and weakest elements of Supergiant Games. While it is my least favourite of them, I'm grateful Transistor exists. For 2 reasons. Firstly, it demonstrates the developers' conviction to experiment with new ideas instead of banking on their previous successes. And secondly, while they aim to not directly copy from their previous games, they take into account the strengths and flaws of their titles, which they work on in their next game. Something they start to experiment with is how the games deal with player failure.
If you're going to find a design theme in all of our games, it's 100% it's player failure. We're thinking about player failure all the time.
While Transistor did this with its losing functions mechanic, it's something that needed refining. But without that first step, even if it was something of a misstep, we wouldn't have their next game. We wouldn't have Pyre. Despite their differences, you can't be blamed for seeing Bastion and Transistor as similar, but Pyre is a whole new beast. Did you ever get that experience with a game or a film that takes everything you personally love and weaves them together? Well, if you have a craving for a colourful ensemble cast and a choice-based narrative with actual consequences, Pyre is that game for you. In the world of Pyre, you are banished to the downside, a barren dimension for exiles and prisoners. This arid prison of a wasteland is home to only the foulest of criminals. Murderers, terrorists, avid readers. That's right, you're a bookworm in a world where literacy is punishable by exile. The imperial country known as the Commonwealth has outlawed books, which means it's not the best time to be a scholar. To return to the Commonwealth and be absolved of your crimes, you must compete in a tournament known as the Rights. You are the newest member of a team called the Nightwings and become their Reader, a commander and strategist who coordinates the other Nightwings during the Rights. It's definitely the hardest game to categorize out of Supergiant's repertoire as it molds so many different genres together, but the main intent was to expand the cast into a squad-like adventure crew.
We had made this very kind of lonesome world in Transistor, and Bastion for that matter, and like, let's make a game that has more warmth to it, with like a bigger cast of characters that you get to know.
The game is half visual novel, half 3-on-3 sports strategy, which means half is this, and the other half is this. As you traverse the downside, your time is divided between engaging with your fellow outcasts and orchestrating them to win each match. Now, chances are that if you're cozying up with a high fantasy video game, you care as much for athletics as you do for sunbathing on the surface of Venus. But I have to say, this is the closest I've ever come to caring about team sports. And it really is one hell of a team. The Nightwings are composed of the world's distinct races. To name just a few, you have the stoic demon Jodariel, the free-spirited Headwin, the charismatic canine Rookie with his fabulous handlebar, and also this fuzzy little ball of joy. Oh my god, he's so fluffy, I just want to pick one right now, look at his little face. Each of the Nightwings have their own strengths, abilities, and reasons for exile. Regardless of their appearances or personable natures, their stories all reveal the solemn core hidden within their exterior. Let's take a quick look at one such burdened soul. This is Sir Gilman, and yes, he is a one-eyed worm in a knight's helmet. And I love him. Out of all your teammates, this guy is the most overtly comedic and outlandish of the team. His exclamations of chivalry and his massive anime eye turn him into the bouncy optimist on this danger-taught adventure. So how could such a soul have ended up in the downside? A valiant soldier of the Sea Dominion during an ongoing war, Gilman is a survivor after an ambush wiped out his entire regiment. It weighs on his noble heart that not only does he bear the sorrow of seeing all of his comrades die, but that he couldn't stop a fellow soldier, Sir Deluge, from fleeing the fight. Knowing he has brought dishonor onto himself and his people, he volunteers to be sent to the downside, believing he's deserving of such a punishment. What is perhaps the most tragic and ironic is that he was initially part of an opposing team, forced to work under Sir Deluge, the very same worm that deserted him. After a battle with your current party, Gilman leaves Deluge's group and dedicates himself to you and the Nightwings. Every character has a similar, if not more tragic story behind them. These characters are the heart of Pyre, and together they make the Nightwings an endearing variety of outcasts. It's tempting to go through each of them, but that would remove some of the reward if you haven't played the game. But all I'll say is, if you can care about the strife of a giant worm in a knight's helmet, you can be confident you'll get invested in the others. This is the great joy of gathering a ragtag group of misfits in games like Mass Effect or Persona 5, because it emulates what it's like to actually have these free ends I keep hearing about. However, one issue with some games of that ilk is that there'll be latecomers to the roster that you'll get little chance to use, meaning you won't be too invested in them. Pyre flips that on its head because winning the rights only saves one person per victory. You must then choose a single member of your team to set free each time. At that point, you'll need to level up the latecomers to keep the team strong for the next round. This creates a dilemma where your strongest characters are the ones you've had at the beginning, meaning they're more integral to your team and you're likely more invested in them emotionally. So do you set them free because you care about them, or do you hold on to them because they're your MVP? Keep in mind, that's only if you win the rights at all. The plot keeps going even if you lose a match or fail to liberate a Nightwing. Meaning, if you lose, you have to go back, look your friends in the eye, and tell them you've failed. Oh god, Tizo, I'm so sorry! It's inevitable you will face a defeat at some point in the game, even if it's just one, and it will weigh on you. In Greg Kasavin's words, they wanted to convey what happens when you face defeat and have to come back from it the next day, look your friends in the face, look yourself in the mirror, and deal with the consequences of the decisions you've made. Though, while the game autosaves after each match, you can restart a write during if it's not going well for you. Though I would discourage this more than I would for Transistor. Reloading a checkpoint there was to bypass an annoying mechanic, whereas here it would take away from the overall narrative experience. But you can't do anything to avoid what you'll inevitably feel when your favourite character is freed. Which is great for them, but once they're gone, you're left with only nostalgia in the weight of their absence. Then there's the first gut punch of returning to the team wagon without them, seeing only what they left behind, whether that be cooking pots or just a throw rug. It certainly achieves this not just on an individual scale, but on a much larger one. You're not just releasing them for the character's sake. The Nightwings aim to start a rebellion against the unjust Commonwealth, and the rest of the crew serve as important pieces in a larger game. Depending on how many squadmates you set free, the revolution can vary from a peaceful reform to an absolute bloodbath. Heavy enough for you? There's more. Your opponents are rival teams, also fighting for their chance at freedom. While you will come across the odd stone-cold twat, many just have the same goal of returning home as you do, but they just happen to be on the other side of the pitch. You're all in the same boat, but you're painfully aware that in order to win, others, and their hopes, must lose. Hell, even some of the more antagonistic opponents have moments of depth to them. Let me paint the picture. You and the Nightwings finally reach the Fall of Solium, where two teams are but one right away from winning freedom. The final obstacle towering between you and your first liberation is Ignarius. This dude is hench, arrogant, and so well known he doesn't even bother to really introduce himself. It's guys like him that made you hate sports in the first place. Yet for all that machismo, as you begin to prevail, you get this internal thought. This is one of those small yet effective moments that tells you everything you need to know about a character. And that guy's just an opponent. But that's not the only thing that makes Pyre diverge from Bastion and Transistor. I mentioned earlier that Supergiant's stories aim to not interrupt the gameplay, in order to be as unobtrusive as possible. Pyre is the outlier. Instead of merging gameplay and story, they separate them outright, which they do brilliantly. As a gamer, you'll likely have played big titles like Horizon Zero Dawn, Spider-Man, and even The Witcher 3. These games, for all of their highlights, execute story through cutscenes that feel more like a necessary evil. It's very likely the gameplay is the selling point, so the overabundance of cutscenes is detrimental. However, this works for Pyre as the dialogue and interactions are a core of the game's identity. This clear half-and-half style has three benefits. The first is that it puts you in the right frame of mind. It sits you down and tells you directly how it's going to be, so you accept it and prepare accordingly. The second is that it builds on Transistor's flaws. Transistor went between real-time and frozen time so frequently that it felt fatiguing to go back and forth through the whole game. Pyre keeps its two disparate styles separate by distributing them in larger chunks. This affords them plenty of breathing room and allows you to focus on one style or format at a time. The third is that it effectively builds up tension for the next match, especially considering you know the consequences if you lose. Given that you just spent time doing nothing but interacting with the characters, it makes each match feel more significant when they happen. This causes you to tense up every time one of your teammates charges towards the enemy's pyre. When Tom played this, he was full on screaming. Like the rest of Supergiant Games' titles, it's the little mechanics that make a large difference. For instance, Pyre has a green motivation bar alongside a character's experience meter. If a character is not selected for a match, they gain motivation, which gives them bonus experience in their next write. This enables underused characters to catch up to the main game, so there's no need to worry about the bench. Of course, I do have to mention the soundtrack. I'm sorry, I know I've talked about it ad nauseum, but I have to. The fantasy element of the game has been cranked up, far more so than Bastion, and this is reflected in the score. Lutes, flutes, mandolins, all creating some of the best trekking music ever. You know what I mean. The kind of songs you can listen to while you're walking somewhere or undertaking a journey to a faraway land. Given that one of your companions is a bard, hearing the songs feels like they're weaving a fable and immortalizing your journey. Also, he plays lute versions of every song. Not to mention that each team has their own theme, which can vary from punk rock to sea shanties. This game is a music lover's dream. Anyway, moving on from the soundtrack. Oh, one more thing. Even the credits song varies based on who you've released and who remained in the downside at the end. Not to mention your chosen gender. So that's 3 genders for you, he, she, and they, 10 characters, each with a verse, and 2 variations of the verse based on whether each one left or remained, making a total of...
Gavin, I think you did the math on the permutations of the epilogue, because it's all based on your game state and the choices you make, and it's like, there are something like 200 million ending permutations that are possible in Pyre. We're like, oh, that was a lot of work, I guess, for 12 people.
Jesus, yeast-infected flapping Christ! 200 million?
When I was listening, all I could imagine was, wow, that must have been hard to record.
Impressive as that is, the thing that really makes it is that when you hear it after your first playthrough, it isn't just a song, but your song. Keeping all of this in mind, Pyre was a massive undertaking for Supergiant, which inevitably does leave it more vulnerable to issues. The middle section gets quite repetitive, write, solium, release, repeat, until few of your players remain. There is also an issue which I will admit I didn't realise until I watched Never Knows Best's video on Supergiant. So while it's worth noting, I can't take any credit for pointing this out. You're given a journal showing how each team is faring in the rights, including the Nightwings. The implication being that the top 2 teams go head to head in the Fall of Solium to set a teammate free. This gave each match more meaning, as it meant you constantly had to stay on top of everyone else. However, regardless of how you do in the individual matches, you're always included in the Liberation Rite, meaning this journal and tallying doesn't mean anything. Thankfully, this doesn't take away from the Liberation Rites themselves, and these smaller matches serve as a means to level up your characters and get better at the game. There are also a fair amount of personal grudges between enemy captains and your teammates that come to head in these confrontations, so there is still an emotional reason to win. And it's that emotion that makes the game worth playing. So, if you want to truly feel a sense of weight on your decisions, or you're looking for a good story to invest yourself in, or you just want to make friends with this little guy, which you do, then Pyre is beckoning for you to play it. Now, as great as Pyre is, it did come with some issues, which Supergiant Games became more aware of. Firstly, it's the hardest to define and is much more niche than their other games, so it'll likely be harder than the previous games to jump into without much prior context. Secondly, there isn't much replay value if you know the story and succeeded in releasing the characters you liked best. Unless you are that one guy getting all 200 million variations of the credit song. Supergiant knew this and were worried that players wouldn't explore Pyre to its fullest. We did all that work to create truly branching open-ended storytelling, but Pyre feels like a game that you'd only play once. So, with that in mind, they sought to answer this question. How do you convey all the interweaving stories you want in a way that encourages multiple playthroughs? Easy. By dying. Rather than create their own worlds and mythology a la Bastion or Pyre, Supergiant decided to dip their toes into real mythology. Real as in actual... never mind. Greek mythology is a heavenly buffet of lore and characters to set a story in, and has been, many times. On a scale ranging from the cutesy fun times of Disney's Hercules to the head-ripping bloodbath of God of War, Hades nestles itself in the middle. Supergiant's art style and jovial humour paint the Greek heroes in a personable light, but it's not above the occasional bludgeoning. Hades distinguishes itself from Supergiant's previous games for two reasons. Firstly, it was on early access for 2 years, with the full version only coming out in September 2020. This meant a lot of time was spent updating, gathering player feedback, and patching, typically on tight schedules. And secondly, the game was being polished and officially came out during a time when everybody needed it. In early March, the Supergiant team made the decision to continue the development of Hades remotely, as San Francisco accrued cases of COVID-19, eventually resulting in a lockdown. Nonetheless, the developers met their new conditions head-on, and after nearly 7 months of remote working, on the 17th of September, Hades version 1.0 was complete.
Few tales are told of Hades, whose very name inspires fear and penitence, reminding us of the inevitable fate which we all share. I, however, mean to tell you such a tale. Listen carefully.
You are Zagreus, son of Hades, who is basically what you'd get if Prince Zuko had the charm of Tom Hiddleston. Zagreus and his dad don't get along because Hades is demeaning, aggressive, and, most importantly, won't let the game be named after its actual protagonist. Oh, and he's been hiding that Zagreus' real mother is Persephone. Having been lied to for years, Zagreus sets his sights for the surface, where his mother resides. On the way, he'll battle all the monsters hell can muster with naught but his sword, his wit, and the blessings of all the Greek gods. Or at least the ones that people actually know. The catch? Hades is a roguelike, meaning every time you die, you get sent back to the very start, which in this case is the House of Hades. Keep in mind, Hades is the god of the underworld, so when anyone would die, they would naturally end up on his doorstep, including you. So it makes sense in the game's world, but it's also kind of funny. You're turned home each time, having to do the walk of shame back to your room like a scorned child. As they have done before, Supergiant uses Hades as an opportunity for self-improvement, taking ideas from previous titles while still adding new elements. The biggest improvements on them are how instead of losing one power at a time, as you did with Transistor, you lose everything after your run is finished. As well as how, similarly to Pyre, the narrative continues despite your many defeats. The story is told through character interactions in the House of Hades. And take it from me, you have ample time to indulge in these interactions as you're repeatedly butchered and return to the start. In fact, the game is aware that you will die multiple times, so when you return to Hades' pad, there'll be little story elements or character dialogues you wouldn't have had otherwise. It's less that the narrative carries on despite you dying, but more the narrative carries on because you're dying. So if you're that one prick who beat Hades in a single run without dying, even though technically that's impossible, then you'll miss out on the lifeblood of the story. It relies on you repeatedly coming back to change your loadout, boost character relationships, and get glimpses into the world. These glimpses can expand on the history between Zagreus and Hades, provide information about background characters, or just present two people having a nonsensical conversation. Oh, and of course, getting a chance to pet the three-headed dog Cerberus. I could do this for hours. And I have, but it really creates the sense this is a living, vibrant world, and frankly you're just in the background while everyone's actually working. The way the story is told really lends itself to an early access game, as it gradually adds more pieces to the puzzle through the updates. Each of these added new areas, characters, new gods, weapons, and eventually, after version 1.0 came out, the true ending. Having constant death as an expected component, as well as the gradual increases to the world and lore, make the game an incredibly addictive experience. Now, addiction in video games can go one of two ways. Either it's used productively to encourage you to keep playing and overcome a legitimate challenge, or it could be implemented as a substitute for, having fun. Fun is the keyword here. If you're not having fun, then the game is nothing more than a hamster wheel where you only win if you stop. Hades is great fun, and it handles power progression beautifully. You know that feeling in a game when you encounter a boss that absolutely wipes the floor with you? Then you come back when you're 50 levels higher and kill it with 2 hits, just out of sheer spite? If Hades was a feeling, it would be that. While you lose the blessings you acquired on a run, you keep certain materials that can permanently upgrade yourself and unlock weapons. These weapons range from a sword to a Captain America shield to a goddamn gun, each coming with their own strengths and upgrade possibilities. While there's not as much overall variety as there was in Bastion, it's very likely you'll develop a personal favourite based on your playstyle. Whether you're a defender, a punchy boy, or you're under obligation to use a spear because of your name, you'll find something that works for you. The permanent upgrades range from essentially vital to incredibly situational. Choose to increase your health bar, increase your dashing capabilities, or deal more damage to enemies afflicted with 2 status conditions. You later unlock the ability to have these upgrades as they stand, or swap them with a variant with a different effect, but along the same lines. They're not always on the same level as one another, especially the vital ones, but it's nice to see that you're free to experiment. Plus, you can regain all the material you spent and reassign it as you please. Then there's the trinkets, which you earn by providing offerings to the various characters you meet either in the House of Hades or throughout a run. Each one you gain offers a specific buff that you retain so long as you have it equipped. Not only does it encourage interactions with basically every character, but these can offer great benefits on the next run. The most useful ones give you additional lives that keep you in the game a tad longer, or ensure you start with a fat wad of gold to splurge at the next shop. The experimentation and the randomness make every run in Hades feel fresh and exciting, and always has that feeling that this could be the lucky one where you get to the end. Of course, you will think to yourself beforehand that you won't win this round, you're just looking to grind to upgrade material. Oh, you ignorant mortal. You don't grind in Hades. Here's how a game always goes. Okay, I know I'm not going to complete it, I'm just going to get some upgrade material. Oh, maybe I'll give that new weapon a go. Okay, I'm doing alright. This weapon works well. Oh, this is actually pretty fun. Ooh, that's a pretty nifty upgrade. Oh, I'm actually nearer where I was last time. Wow, that's another good upgrade. Holy crap, I'm further than I was before. I might do it this time. I'm getting so far. I'm gonna do it! God damn it. Ooh, I can now afford that upgrade. What all this does is ensure that over time, the areas you spend hours struggling to just complete eventually become mere stepping stones. Enemies who were once the bane of your existence are now the warm-up exercise. But you never feel too overpowered, and there'll always be a curveball thrown at you. As time goes on, the old areas get more variations. For example, the boss at the end of the first area is the Fury Megara. But after beating her a good handful of times, it can now be one of 3 of the Furies, each with their own unique attacks that you need to adapt to. Not to mention, you can get unlucky and encounter a mini-boss midway through each area, which will leave a substantial mark. The difficulty has certainly been ramped up for Hades. Gone is the no-sweat mode from Bastion, now it's sweat until you fill up a paddling pool. In fact, the game puts another layer onto Supergiant's take on difficulty. The deity mechanic in Bastion has been replicated in some form across all the games. But as well as letting you customize the challenges of a run, Hades also accrues challenges as the run progresses through the upgrades. Upgrades are essentially won after you battle through each chamber. Then you're given several doors you can go through with their respective rewards displayed. Of course, they'll likely come with their own challenges. One of the most high-risk, high-reward choices, should you come across it, is the option to get 2 blessings from the gods. However, once you pick one, you get attacked by the other while fighting a wave of enemies. Survive and you get the second upgrade, but it's likely you'll have taken hefty damage in the fight. This makes the difficulty more contingent on the choices you make. Also, there's this guy. Ugh! Occasionally, a portal will open up, which you can enter at the cost of some health. In this little nether zone, the primeval god Chaos will offer you one of 3 blessings to choose from. Each will hinder you for a few chambers, and then you get a bonus award at the end. What's great about the blessings and the randomness is that your entire gameplay could be shaken up with one good upgrade. You could stick to the normal attack without using the special attack, then you get a useful upgrade for the special, so your entire strategy can be changed in an instant. And now it's time to talk about the soundtrack. Oh, here we go again, another gushing session about the soundtrack. So what's Hades' soundtrack like then? Yeah, it's pretty good. Wait, let me finish. Like all of Korb's work, you can feel that bass and synth drums, but each game builds on that with new instruments to fit the game's current setting. So what works for a game based around fighting monstrosities from hell? Huh. Yes, of all things, metal has been used in this game's soundtrack, which is a genre that at this point hasn't been explored in a Supergiant game.
How metal can I possibly be?
It's definitely not taken to Doom's level, and it's primarily reserved for boss fights for that extra spice. A larger portion of the soundtrack incorporates both a slide guitar and a theremin, giving this spooky but action-packed atmosphere to the world. As to why I say it's pretty good, what I really mean is good, but not as good as the other three. The songs with the vocal accompaniment, especially Good Riddance and In the Blood, are very well made. And of course, Darren Korb and Ashley Barrett's voices are like a caramel eclair melting in your mouth. However, there's just plain and simply less variety of music than there was in, say, Pyre. That soundtrack had multiple themes for each of the areas and teams, typically altering styles and instruments to reflect someone's personality or culture. Like the punk rock for Barker, or the flamenco elements used in Tamitha's song. The music in Hades is less about accentuating characters and more about emphasizing the broader setting, which lessens its range. And fundamentally, while the songs still succeed at reflecting the Greek underworld, the soundtrack feels less prevalent than in the other games. Though upon reflection, there may be several reasons for that. The music may be less noticeable because the game is much more fast-paced. You don't have as much of those calming moments of serenity like in Transistor or Pyre to really take it in. It's pure survival and combat. The songs for each of Hades' areas vary in intensity depending on what enemies you're fighting, which is neat, but it could explain why it's not as instantly noticeable as it was in Supergiant's previous works. And practically speaking, having it more in the background means it won't become annoying after you venture through the same area 30 times. It's also very possible I just couldn't hear the music over my frantic clicking. There is another drawback to the relentlessness of the game. Given its much faster pace, some attacks and abilities can be easily overlooked, like the cast power. It's a prism you can throw at enemies to deal more damage or take advantage of a specific blessing you got from a god. But typically there isn't much time to think that tactically as you're always frantically dodging. So in my playthroughs at least, it rarely gets used. And considering you can get incredibly far without it, it's similar to the special attacks in Bastion where you don't use it when you don't really need to. Now, this could be due to keyboard controls and may vary on the Switch, but it takes a while to get the hang of utilizing everything. Oh yeah, Hades is on the Switch. So when's Zagreus coming to Smash? Oh come on, it's not that much of a stretch. I mean Jesus, they got Minecraft in there now. But all those gripes are minuscule in comparison to Hades' strengths. My entire viewpoint of the game can be summarized thusly. Hades is the game I played to unwind from writing this script. And why? Because it's an absolute blast. It's a fast-paced, addictive, constantly changing hell of a time with all the charm you'd expect from Supergiant games. It just needs one more thing for me to put it above Bastion.
Oh, I can definitely relate to at least some of that. But you sound practically impressed with me there, Meg. I feel so flattered.
There it is. Hades is currently Supergiant's highest reviewed game. It's also a strong contender for 2020's Game of the Year. So can it be considered objectively their best work? Well, here's the thing. In writing this, I thought about whether the games should be ranked, or pitted against one another to determine which one comes out on top. While their games have certainly evolved on a technical level as they accrue acclaim and resources, saying that one of their games is better than another would be entirely missing the point. Because the thing I love most about Supergiant games is that they're not focused on making their previous game but better. They're focused on making each of their games different.
Players found these games at the right point in their lives to where they really had like as much of an impact as possible. You know, they have tattoos of Bastion or something. Like, I'm not going to tell that person Hades is even better than Bastion, because Bastion has like Bastion has like a sacred place in the heart of that person.
Meaning which one is the best is entirely down to you. Any one of these games can be your favourite for purely personal reasons. So it's not a question of which one is best, but which one do you most connect with. For me, that game is Pyre, because I have such a fondness for the growing group of misfits that band together for a common goal. But your ranking of Supergiant Games' work could be the complete reverse of mine, and you'd be completely justified. Each of these games aspires to bring something new to the table, offering unique experiences and demonstrating real creativity to shine through. And there's something wonderful and exciting about that. I have absolutely no idea what Supergiant Games will do after Hades, and I don't think they do either. But so far they've made some of the most worthwhile games of the last decade. So I very much look forward to their future projects, and as a gamer, I cherish what they have made and how far they've come. And I hope I've given you reasons too as well. Also, if anyone from Supergiant Games is listening, I have a favour. Can you make your next game title something that can be easily Googled? So many times I searched for Bastion or Transistor and I got Wikipedia pages of fortifications, semiconductor devices, or goddamn Overwatch. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to Tom, the other half of Curmudgeon Media, for providing the artwork and for helping edit the script. Alongside my video game content, you can check out his film videos on our channel. In conducting research for this video, the most valuable asset was NoClip's series of documentaries and interviews with the Supergiant team, which I have referenced throughout this video. I would highly recommend their channel if you're interested in the behind the scenes of game development. I'd also like to recommend Never Knows Best's video on Supergiant Games, as well as his other content. So now I want to hear from you. What's your favourite Supergiant game? Do you disagree with any points I've made on Transistor? Do you have a favourite loadout in Hades? Who's your favourite member of the Nightwings? And if it isn't Tizo or Sir Gilman, why do you have no soul? Let me know in the comments section or on our social media pages. Link in the description.